A week later, I got the long email making accusations against Neil Gaiman.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're examining the ongoing allegations against Neil Gaiman, what's being said, and what is his response. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Your punishment then shall be a gift.
He's one of the most successful authors of the last 50 years, writing books, creating comics, and overseeing adaptations of those books and comics into TV shows and movies.
You are utterly the stupidest, most self-centered, pathetic excuse for an anthropomorphic personification on this or any other plane.
You've definitely heard of him and seen or read something he's touched, whether it's The Sandman, Good Omens, American Gods, or even Coraline.
It's a dowsing rod. Ow! And I don't like being stalked, not by psycho nerds or their cats.
Award-winning and prolific, Gaiman has proved to have massive cultural staying power and enduring appeal, but all of that began to change in 2024. An investigation led by highly experienced journalists, including Rachel Johnson, appeared in July 2024 on a podcast by Tortoise Media.
However many texts a woman might send afterwards, that still happened in that order.
This podcast didn't gain too much attention at the time, though it did lead to scrutiny on Gaiman and affected some of the productions he was working on. He left Good Omens Series 3, while other shows have been put on hold, though more adaptations, including Anansi Boys on Amazon and Sandman Series 2 on Netflix, are still going ahead as planned.
I'm really excited for the public to see it.
The podcast, which is called Master: The Allegations Against Neil Gaiman, went through the stories and evidence provided by women accusing him of serious sexual misconduct and assault, including their WhatsApp messages, texts, and NDAs Gaiman asked them to sign.
He was over 60 and she was 23, and she was a nanny coming into their household and meeting him for the first time on the first day.
It's key to note here that an NDA doesn't protect anybody from being investigated or charged for criminal wrongdoing. As well as the NDAs, there were large payments made to the women, one receiving $60,000 and another receiving $300,000 from Gaiman, along with those NDAs.
The risk was we'd end up telling a story of what he might describe as a messy and difficult sexual relationship.
Investigations deepened after the podcast, and in January 2025, Gaiman found himself the subject of a cover story in New York Magazine. The cover featured only a picture of Gaiman and the phrase attributed to him by the now 8 women who have accused him, "Call me master." The most detailed allegations come from one woman, Scarlett Pavlovich, who worked as a nanny for Gaiman and his then-wife, Amanda Palmer, after meeting Palmer.
You spend enough time with your fans and they really know you and they really like you and they really trust you.
After striking up a friendship with Palmer when they met in New Zealand, Palmer, in 2022, asked Pavlovich to babysit her son with Gaiman, which soon became a regular nannying position. However, things immediately soured when Pavlovich met Gaiman, as she alleges that on the day they met, he persuaded her to take a bath in the outdoor bathtub on his large property and then joined her.
Was that within a few hours of meeting and starting her work with Neil Gaiman, he got into her bath naked, and she alleges he assaulted her in the bath.
He proceeded to seriously assault her after she'd said no, also revealing that Palmer had told him explicitly not to try and sleep with Pavlovich beforehand. Pavlovich continued working as a nanny, explaining that at the time, she didn't view what happened as non-consensual and had such low self-worth that she accepted Gaiman's treatment of her. Many similar and degrading incidents followed, the details of which are too sickening for us to repeat.
But it's all about connection, and it's all about connecting to other human beings.
Throughout the article, it becomes clear that Palmer knew about Gaiman's habits, if you will, involving vulnerable young women.
this pattern, a clear pattern started emerging, that these allegations were starting to paint a very clear picture.
Chillingly, Pavlovich later recounts what happened when she finally told Palmer everything he had done, with Palmer saying, quote, 14 women have come to her about this, end quote. Seemingly, she knew everything and didn't stop him to protect other women.
I realise I'm signing books for people who were not born when Sandman #1 came out.
But most disturbing are Pavlovich's allegations that Gaiman's son, very young at the time, was present in the house or sometimes in the same room when these assaults were carried out. She's not the only one who said this either. A woman named Caroline Wallner, who worked as a caretaker on one of Gaiman's properties, recalled a similar incident where he tried to initiate sexual contact with her while they were in bed with his son in the middle.
Or in Caroline's case, there was a big exchange of money for an NDA, which was the second one, right? So he had signed on with Scarlett as well.
When Palmer later asked Gaiman whether what Pavlovich had said about her son's presence was true and whether the boy had been wearing headphones, Gaiman said that he wasn't. Caroline, in the end, got $300,000 in exchange for signing an NDA and moving away from the property immediately.
I think, it was the accumulation of evidence that she was the fifth woman to go to do a recorded interview. And we had those recordings of him speaking.
Caroline also said that Palmer confided in her that she was growing more disturbed by Gaiman. The two eventually separated in 2020, with formal divorce proceedings beginning in 2022. Gaiman is reportedly trying to take everything from Palmer while she wants to keep custody of their son.
I had all these cool stories in my head and I hoped we wouldn't get cancelled before I told them.
The specific acts alleged by these women get very nasty, and we won't go into specifics, with more than one saying that she specifically told him no, in one case shouting it at him, and others saying that they simply froze. It's worth remembering that enthusiastic consent is crucial, and somebody freezing and not saying a word is not enthusiasm.
Everything I'm writing, I'm imagining a hypercritical audience of roughly 15 million people looking over my shoulders going, oh, that's not Sandman.
Gaiman himself has released a statement denying the allegations, though he's done it in a very specific way. He's repeatedly said that certain things Pavlovich alleges didn't happen because, according to him, she has a memory problem, although no medical evidence supporting this has been produced, and it's not something Pavlovich has talked about.
And very rough and degrading acts that the women say they never really wanted. And so it was a double shock, really.
The other encounters, meanwhile, he says were consensual, denying point blank ever having any non-consensual sexual encounters. Gaiman's representatives also said publicly at the time of the earlier allegations in 2024 that BDSM, quote, may not have been to everyone's taste, but between consenting adults, it is lawful, end quote. However, none of the women have mentioned anything about discussing BDSM encounters beforehand, something that needs to happen for it to be truly consensual.
Yeah, and he was saying, acknowledging his behavior as well.
Yes.
So
They've said that Gaiman behaved violently, using belts in encounters with his own fans, and while he's denied non-consensual sex, he has not denied the accusations that his son was in the room when these things happened. Even if they were consensual, his son's presence is wrong on so many levels. Pavlovich even claimed that Gaiman's son began to refer to her as slave.
And he said,
Yes.
My behavior was shittier than I remembered, and I'm sorry about this, and would it help if I paid you,
And that's without getting into the power dynamics that are clearly at play here.
There is a really problematic power dynamic, not just that he's older, but that she was dependent on him for an income, for housing.
Throughout their open marriage, Palmer and Gaiman encouraged each other to sleep with other people, including their fans, which Gaiman was known to do. This is also indefensible, consensual or not, because of the unequal power dynamic. At least one woman as young as 20 has had an encounter like this with Gaiman. with many meeting him at fan conventions and book signings, as alleged by the woman interviewed for New York Magazine.
One of the public interests was the fact that Neil Gaiman's persona and also his career placed him in continuous contact with young, admiring women.
In one incident, an anonymous woman using the fake name Claire for the purposes of the podcast said that Gaiman paid her $60,000 after he groped her at a book tour.
There were his book signings, his attendance at readings and conventions, again placing him with young fans, impressionable fans.
Again, this has not been denied by Gaiman, though he does claim that stories have been distorted without going into specifics about which stories those are. Pavlovich told journalists that she didn't realize that she'd been hurt by Gaiman until talking to people outside of the situation, and that those people were horrified to learn that Palmer was aware of so much and had still brought Pavlovich into their relationship.
Who makes you laugh the most?
My wife, Amanda Palmer, and my son, Ash, make me laugh the most, particularly Ash.
She also said that in the aftermath of telling Palmer everything that happened, Pavlovich considered taking her own life and was prepared to do so. The New York Magazine article ends with a story of the victims together and forming a WhatsApp group to try to heal.
Several of the women said to us, "We don't want him to be cancelled. We just want him to stop. We just want him to be held accountable."
The oldest allegations date back 20 years, while Gaiman in 2024 said that some of them had been dismissed by New Zealand police, which the police later disputed, saying that they were still investigating and that many people hadn't yet been interviewed and that Palmer had refused to speak to them.
So Netflix cancelled a show that was based on Neil Gaiman's work, Dead Boy Detectives, without saying why.
As it currently stands, Gaiman has left many productions and been disavowed by his fans, which is understandable given he's managed to cultivate a fan base appalled by the actions he's alleged to have done.
He presented for years as a feminist, a trans ally, very kind of progressive, you know?
He's also not yet threatened libel or defamation actions against the newspapers or podcasts that have published these stories. Amanda Palmer has said very little because she's still in the middle of divorcing Gaiman and, presumably, wants to ensure she gets full custody of their child, though fans have been just as fast to call her out for her role in what happened.
Amazon said they're pausing production of a third season of Good Omens.
More is sure to come to light, especially as Palmer's divorce wraps up, though it's already been going on for 5 years, and as, undoubtedly, more women come forward. If criminal charges are ever pressed against Gaiman, we can expect to learn more that way too.
The Corinthian.
I assumed as much. Still feeding on the dreamers he was meant to serve.
Yes.
We're also likely going to see an end to adaptations of his work, though studios currently don't seem to have plans to pull any of the upcoming releases.
What you want as a reporter is to get the other side of the story, and you very rarely get it. But Neil Gaiman gave us his side of the story.
What do you think about the allegations, and what do you think the next step should be? Let us know in those comments below.
Corinthian. My creations stay in the dreaming.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.